Did you ever wonder if the Straw Hats could defeat the real-world army? How would they fare against modern weapons like tanks, fighter jets, bombs, or even missiles? Well, in order to answer that, I created 5 different levels the army would use to attack Straw Hats, and with each level, the army's power will increase exponentially. Let's first see how would each member of the crew do on their own. Is there anyone among them who can beat all of the levels by themselves? For example, the first wanted level is just a bunch of regular armed soldiers, which means Usopp will be outnumbered from the very beginning. Now, while Usopp is just a human who could easily die if hit with a single bullet, this guy is extremely lucky and also has thousands of tricks up his sleeve. For instance, he could use smoke bombs to make it harder for enemies to see him, and even dials from Skypiea to send their attacks back at them. Running from cover to cover and strategically taking out enemies one by one, I believe Usopp would emerge victorious here. However, this means that his wanted level will now increase to 2 stars, and this is where everything gets much harder, as this level adds modern helicopters and tanks. Could Usopp really survive this? Well, you might think that Usopp doesn't stand a chance here, but that's not really the case, because he still hasn't used some of his most powerful attacks, plants! His plants can entangle dozens of people at once and could definitely grow tall enough to take down choppers. As for the tanks, the plants could just flip them over, rendering them completely useless. From here on, Usopp can just finish off the remaining soldiers and be done with the 2nd level. Okay, Usopp definitely didn't disappoint so far, but now that he angered the military, they will add the 3rd wanted level to his name, and this one is the most dangerous by far, as Usopp will now have to survive against the advanced fighter jets. Click the subscribe button to wish him good luck. He'll need it. The 3rd wanted level would obviously be a big problem for our Straw Hat, as these things are way faster than helicopters and cannot be brought down with plants. On top of that, fighter jets can also drop missiles and bombs from the sky, which Usopp has no chance of avoiding. Realizing he has no chance of winning, Usopp would give up and surrender. And with a little luck, they may send him to prison instead of killing him. Although Usopp managed to get to level 3, this is still only a very small chunk of the army's full strength. Is there anyone among the remaining 9 Straw Hats who can take the entire army down? How about Nami? Well, similar to Usopp, Nami doesn't have any special physical abilities that would allow her to survive bullets, so she has to be really careful. During the first wanted level, she would be able to take care of all the soldiers simply by blowing them away using her climb attack. Also, in order to make sure she doesn't get hit, she could create a tornado with her staff and deflect bullets that way. When it comes to the 2nd level, tanks and choppers would be a bit tricky to deal with. However, thanks to Nami's trusty companion Zeus, she would be able to easily destroy both tanks and choppers by showering them with lightning. Moving on to the 3rd level, Nami suffers the same problem as Usopp because she and Zeus would have a really hard time hitting fighter jets. Using lightning, she might be able to bring down a couple of them, but even so, just 1 successful missile hit would be enough to kill her. And she definitely doesn't have enough plot armor to dodge every single one. People usually consider Chopper the strongest character of the weakling trio, so let's see how many wanted levels he can pass. The first one would be easy. He wouldn't even have to use his monster point and could simply squish all the soldiers in his guard point. Now for the 2nd level, transforming into monster point would be his only option if he wants to destroy the tanks. He can either completely destroy them by stepping on them or simply turn them upside down. Both options should work fairly well. Helicopters would be a bit problematic because Chopper doesn't have any ranged abilities, but considering they aren't really that fast, I think he can easily just throw tanks or other stuff to bring them down. Sadly, when it comes to the 3rd level, no matter how much I think about it, I just don't see a way Chopper could bring down fast fighter jets. Throwing stuff at them would be one option, but being able to successfully hit these things would require a level of sniping skill that Chopper definitely doesn't have. So, unfortunately, Chopper's journey will also end at this level. Okay, the army proved to be a much stronger opponent than Straw Hats initially thought, but there are still 7 of them left to cover, and at the end of the video, we'll cover what would happen if all of them fought the army together. Brook is an interesting case because he should be very fragile, seeing that he's made out of bones, but in some ways, he's actually pretty durable. The first level would be a breeze for him. He's fast enough to dodge all the bullets, and even if he gets hit by a few, it's no big deal. The 2nd level is a problem for Brook for 2 reasons. Firstly, he can't use armament hockey, meaning he can't really slice through a tank, and secondly, he can't reach the helicopters. Thankfully, both of these problems can be solved by Brook's devil fruit powers. Using his fruit, Brook can detach his soul from his body to get closer to the enemies, and then then use his Soul Scream to knock out those with a soul weaker than his. To be fair, he only used this technique against homies, but in theory, it should work the same way on humans. Just think of it as a knockoff short-range version of 𝐿 Haki. Wanted level 3 would be an immovable wall for Brook for the same reason the other characters couldn't get past it. He just doesn't have a way to hit the jets. However, what if I tell you that Brook will actually pass this level? You see, no matter how many times the jets shoot Brook and scramble him to pieces, his soul can always pull the bones back together. This means that after some time, the battle would be at a stalemate, which means that Brook would be the first character to get 4-star wanted level. This level is a bit different than the others, and instead of new weapons, the army will get knowledge on a specific Straw Hat they are fighting. Pretty much just imagine an army getting a list of weaknesses for each Straw Hat and then preparing accordingly. In Brook's case, the army could easily win by separating some of Brook's bones after he is destroyed to prevent him from regenerating. I know it sounds ridiculous, but Luffy did a similar thing to Buggy, so it would probably work on Brook too. After this, they could just throw the bones in the sea, and that's it for poor Brook. But now it's time to see how good Franky's technology and weapons are compared to what we have here in the real world. Level 1 has guns? That's nothing for Franky. His steel body can't be scratched by weapons like that. Quickly moving on to level 2, the only thing that's kind of a threat to Franky are the tanks, but it's nothing a few strong punches can't change. As for the helicopters, he could use the flamethrower from his mouth to ignite them, 𝐸 to blow them away, or any other weapon in his arsenal really. The 3rd level put a stop to 3 Straw Hats already, so let's see if Franky is strong enough to clear it. With their missiles and bombs, the jets can obviously damage Franky to a point, but he can do a lot more damage to them. The other Straw Hats struggled with reaching the jets, but Franky has a perfect attack for this. Radical Beam! This high precision, long range attack makes destroying jets a piece of cake. And just like that, Franky earned himself a wanted level 4. Going through Franky's file, the army will quickly notice Franky's greatest weakness, his back. In case you forgot, Franky has mentioned several times that he can't reach his back to do upgrades on it, which makes it a weak spot with very little protection. Knowing this, the army can just surround him and start shooting. I believe Franky would be able to survive for some time like this, but now that they're purposefully aiming at his back, a few bullets are bound to get through his defenses. When that happens, he would most likely just fall on the ground from pain, and I believe the army could handle it from there. However, the next Straw Hat, Jinbei, is going to be the biggest challenge for the army so far. Would he be strong enough to beat the unbeatable 4th level? Starting from the beginning, Jinbei would easily karate chop the soldiers while protecting himself from their bullets using armament haki. On the 2nd level and onward, Jinbei would stick close to a water source like a river so he can utilize more advanced fishman karate and jutsu techniques, mainly the ones that let him shoot drops of water like bullets, which can easily pierce and destroy both tanks and helicopters. For dealing with the fighter jets, I think his best strategy is to use his sea current lifter technique, which lets him ride and control a giant stream of water. This should be fast and powerful enough to make a big hole in the planes, or at least get Jinbei closer to them so he can take them down. But now that Jinbei got his 4th wanted star, everything becomes much harder. So let's see what the army has in store for him. First of all, it's important to mention that Jinbei doesn't have any big weaknesses they can exploit. However, they can do something else. Take away his advantage, water. The best option for the army at this point would be to put some kind of poison into all the water around Jinbei, making it too dangerous for him to enter. This would fully prevent him from using his fishman karate, right? Well, that's not entirely true, because he can still use the water particles in the air and his body to do some weaker moves. However, this would mean that Jinbei doesn't have any long-range attacks at his disposal now, preventing him from dealing any damage to flying enemies. The army would obviously take advantage of this, sending as many planes as possible to carpet bomb Jinbei. Considering Jinbei mastered armament haki, I doubt these attacks would deal any damage to him. But how long could he keep his haki active like this? A couple of hours? A day? More than that? Well, it doesn't really matter, as the army has infinite time and resources at their disposal, and as soon as Jinbei's haki starts to weaken, he'd be blown to bits! Nico Robin might be on the stronger side of the crew, but in the real world, she might not be as strong as you think. Obviously, she could take out the 1st level simply by growing hands on her enemies and snapping their necks. During the 2nd level, she could do the same against the person driving the tank, since the range of this ability is quite big, while the helicopters would require her to grow a giant arm or leg to take them down. However, the problem with Robin is that her defense is non-existent because she doesn't have an armament haki, and the body parts she creates with her devil fruit still hurt her if damaged. With that being said, the only way Robin could hope to catch up to the jets is if she transforms into 𝐷𝐸𝐴𝐴. But the reality is that would just make her an easier target. So by the time she manages to bring down a couple of planes, she would already be full of holes and probably dead. Sadly, this means that Robin wouldn't even complete the 3rd level due to not having any defense. And finally, we are moving on to the monster trio, the 3 strongest Straw Hats. Is there anyone among them who can defeat all 5 levels by themselves? Let's start with Sanji. Now, we all know how strong Sanji is, so there's no point in covering the first 2 levels, as he could literally go through them blindfolded. So, against the mighty fighter jets, Sanji could easily reach them using Geppo technique, which allows him to jump on the air. Once he's high enough, a simple fiery kick would do the trick, and just like that, Sanji's wanted level is already increased to level 4. It's quite obvious that Sanji is way stronger than anything we have in the real world. His durability is also insane, and it's really hard to imagine that any of the regular weapons could hurt him. So we can just skip the last 2 levels and call it a day? Well, not so fast. The 4th wanted level grants the army knowledge of Sanji's weaknesses, and oh boy is he in trouble here. Immediately after reading his file, the army would order all forces to retreat and send in a special Sanji squad, consisting only of women. Oh no! Although it sounds silly, throughout the series, Sanji always refused to fight women. Not only that, but was ready to let multiple women kill him without a second thought. Unfortunately, the same thing would happen here, and Sanji would be quickly eliminated, never reaching the 5th level. But could his rival, Roronoa Zoro, do better than him? In Zoro's case, we'll also skip the first 2 levels, as there's just no point in even discussing it. Now, pinning Zoro against the fighter jets, it might look like he can't do much against them. I mean, sure, he can't fly like Sanji, but who needs that when you can send out shockwaves with your swords? Don't forget that Zoro cut a freaking tornado, so he could surely slice the planes just as easily. When it comes to the 4th stage, Zoro would actually pass it instantly because, well, he doesn't really have any exploitable weakness. Sure, he has a bad sense of direction and likes to battle people stronger than him, but in the real world, I just don't see a way the army could utilize any of this against him. It's not like they can just send Mihawk to battle for them. This means that Zoro would be the first Straw Hat to get the 5th wanted level. In this final level, the army will use every single weapon and opportunity at their disposal, not caring at all about collateral damage. I'm talking many more jets than before, artillery, biological weapons, and even nuclear bombs. Can Zoro really win here? Well, kinda. You see, Zoro would have no trouble dealing with anything the army throws at him. He can cut the weapons of any material and also survive pretty much anything. However, one thing he would be completely helpless against is a nuclear bomb. Now, I know many of you are going to say, what are you talking about? Of course Zoro can survive the nuke, but can he really? A nuclear bomb in our world is the closest thing we have to a weapon that destroyed Lulusia. And do you really think Zoro would survive this? Yeah, he wouldn't. As soon as the nuke drops, Zoro wouldn't be feeling very good, and that's because there wouldn't be Zoro anymore. Before we cover how the battle between all Straw Hats together and the army would go, let's first see if the crew's captain, Luffy, can do anything by himself. Can one of the 4 emperors of the sea defeat the whole real-world military? Starting off at level 3 again, because no need to cover the first 2 ones, Luffy would be in no danger whatsoever. Nothing on this level can hurt him, so he can do as he pleases, casually jumping around, destroying tanks and helicopters with a few light punches. Though he would probably need to transform into Snake Man to catch up with the jets more easily. In the 4th level, the obvious weakness the army would try to exploit is Luffy's weakness to seawater. They would bring firefighter helicopters that carry thousands of liters of seawater and dump it all straight on Luffy. They could probably do something like this on a very large area, making it really hard to dodge. This plan would seem successful at first, with Luffy falling to the ground. However, when the army tries to approach him, he would activate his Conqueror's Haki and knock everyone out, beating the 4th level without throwing a single punch. For the final level, Luffy would unleash his Nika form and go crazy. The combination of his Haki and rubbery fruit would make him invincible to any weapons at the army's disposal. Similarly to Zoro, the only thing that stands any chance of hurting Luffy at this point is the atomic bomb. While in the middle of battle, Luffy wouldn't pay too much attention to what this weird thing falling from the sky is, so when it comes really close to the ground, he would realize it's something dangerous and would have to act quickly. Using his Gear 5 powers, I don't doubt Luffy could come up with a bunch of ridiculous ways to stop it. However, in typical Luffy fashion, he'll choose the dumbest one: to eat it. Once the bomb explodes inside him, his body will inflate to a gigantic size in order to contain the explosion. Yeah, it sounds absolutely stupid and unrealistic, but hey, that's Gear 5 for you. So that's it? Luffy won? Well, not quite. You see, although he did survive the explosion, the amount of radiation created from it would be off the charts, and Luffy's body would soon start failing. His poison immunity wouldn't help him here, and he would soon die. Hey, at least he'd be dead in one piece, unlike Zoro. So, none of the Straw Hats could defeat the army by themselves, but here comes the important question. Can they defeat the whole army if they work together? Levels 1 through 3 would be nothing new, and none of the crew members would even get injured. For the 4th level, the military would make use of all of the Straw Hats' weaknesses, but this time, their efforts would be completely useless. The Straw Hat pirates work perfectly as a team, so they would know how to cover each other's weak spots, which would quickly earn them the 5th wanted level. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji would have this situation under control, easily disposing of even the most advanced weapons with ease. The others would mostly try not to get in the way and cover each other's backs. As a last-ditch effort, the army would launch the atomic bomb to wipe everyone out, but not everything would go according to the plan this time. Now that the whole crew is together, someone would definitely notice the bomb while it's still in the air and would come up with a plan to stop it. Knowing everything there is to know about weapons, Frankie would suggest cutting it while it's still high in the air in order to minimize the damage. By the way, this is actually how nukes work apparently. If they are intercepted mid-air, they won't explode properly. There are a couple of ways the crew could do this. For example, Zoro could destroy it from a safe distance using his sword shockwaves, Luffy could turn it into rubber and break it, or maybe even Usopp could shoot it. No matter how they choose to go about it, the explosion would be avoided and the fight would be finished. There would be nothing the army could do at this point, so I guess the answer to the question is yes! The Straw Hats could defeat the real world army if they wanted to. Click on this video next where I build the strongest One Piece crew ever. Go ahead, click it.